I think all of us know that deadlines can be very important. They were certainly important to me when I was a student and you have a project or a paper to write. The deadline, when it was due, was very important, which often meant that the night before you were working into the wee hours of the morning to meet the deadline, to get that paper written. Without a deadline, I may not yet have that paper written. You've got to have in life some deadlines. A due date is very important. For someone who's pregnant, that due date means a lot. A whole lot. Because there's things to do before the due date, besides giving birth when that moment comes. That due date signals what I need to be doing now to be ready for that moment. When I get a credit card bill, pay by such and such a date, I have to pay attention to that because God knows I hate late fees. I hate spending any money that I didn't get anything for. So when I see that date that it's due, you can bet it'll be in on time. In many ways, we live by deadlines and due dates. The milk is best by a certain date. Now I've learned it can go beyond that date. It's best by that date. But it often is good for another week, but you need to be careful. We live with these deadlines. We live with these parameters on our lives. Even on the highway, there's a limit. There's a limit to how fast you're supposed to go. There's a reason for that. Now, most of us fudge a little bit, but we do need to pay attention to these lines. Life has a deadline, which is somewhat being spoken of today in the gospel. There's an end point to every life. There's a finish line to which we are on the way. Praying a psalm the other day that said, "One day in your courts is like 1,000 elsewhere." And I began to wonder, I wonder how many days I have lived. 25,983 days I've lived. Now don't forget, when you calculate this, remember every 4 years there's an extra day in it. So get it right. 25,983 days I've spent. 17 more, and it'll be 26,000 days. Given my genetic makeup and my overall good health, I assume I got another 6,000 or so days to go. But no one knows the day or the hour. No matter how many days we've lived, and no matter how many days we might have left, what does matter is how we're living those days. What are we doing with our days? Sometimes in families, there are important things that need to be accomplished, need to be reconciled, need to happen. What are we waiting for? In our city, there are divisions and conflicts. Is there some role that you and I play in our city, in our church that has so many divisions and rancor? Do you have a part to play in addressing that or healing that? or the nation itself, the world. This may not be, in the words of the prophet Daniel, a time unsurpassed in distress. But every time has stress. Every time has its apocalyptic images to deal with. Struggles of sometimes very intense kind. Apocalyptic literature, like the book of Daniel, the gospel today, are written so we get hope, not to scare us. Sometimes it literally scare the hell out of you when you see the stars falling from the sky and the moon darkened and the sun no longer shining and whoo. But it's not meant to frighten us. Apocalyptic literature is meant to say there will be an endpoint. There is a time. And you have been given time. You've been given your life. And what would be the best way for you to use your days? And not just kind of fritter them away. We may not be in time of unsurpassed distress, but there are certainly enough things in our world that can cause us some alarm. Pope Francis has drawn attention over and over again to the climate. The conference in Glasgow, Scotland, that maybe has finally ended, addressing that, trying to set some deadlines, trying to set some goals by which time we might save the planet from overheating. There's a deadline. They're arguing about those deadlines for getting certain things done, but clearly there are things going on in the atmosphere, on our planet, that are serious. At the time of the Ice Age, nobody knew that was coming. When that ice was building up from the north and coming all the way down into Ohio, taking out all the little dinosaurs. Oh, what a shame. Wouldn't you just love to have a few of those around yet, you know? Nobody knew the Ice Age was coming. They couldn't do anything about it. But we know now there are things happening in the climate and on the planet that we, human beings, just may be able to do some stuff about that. Today is the World Day of the Poor that Pope Francis has initiated a few years ago. It's the poorest people on the planet who are suffering the most from wealthier, industrialized nations who have done the most to pollute the world. But these poor folks are the ones suffering from it the most. And that's part of what the discussions at Glasgow have been about. Again, we may not be living in times unsurpassed in distress, but sometimes just the dynamics in your own family may have their share of stress. In our country, in our church, how do we spend our days now? I remember being at University Hospital, parking in the garage and coming down the stairway, and there on the wall, I don't know if it's still there or not, it says, "Don't count the days. Make the days count." And I just finished counting all my days. Remember, 25,983 of them. I'm counting the days, but I'm going to stop counting the days. Make the days count. However many days are left in my life, how many days you've got to live. How do we use them well? I think that's where Jesus is inviting his disciples to think about. We don't know the day or the hour, but we do know there's a finish line. And St. Paul talks about coming to that finish line in his own life. There is a finish line between the beginning and the end. Where do you feel the call of God to help you to use your energy and your talents? How is God calling us to best use the days and the time that we have. How often, when someone dies, people are filled with regret. I never reconciled with my brother. I never said I was sorry for whatever it was. No, why put that off forever? The days that God is giving us are meant for good, to be used for good. So maybe we listen a little bit this week to the time that God has given me. And what does God, how does God want me to use the time that's been gifted to me? Not in some kind of a panic that I got to do it today. Assume I've got a few more days before the deadline. But not to hold off too long, not to put it off too long. What maybe is ours to do. So do not count the days. Make the days count.